Okay. If you're having any technical issues, you can direct message Megan Snyder or Regan. So you can direct message them and they may be able to help you out. For guests who aren't candidates, just because we have a large number of candidates here, if you're able to keep your cameras off when you're not speaking, that'll help highlight the folks that are candidates in the race. And if everyone can stay muted when they're not speaking, just because there's a large number, and so, you know, someone's phone goes off, someone else's phone goes off. For me, I'm very worried that my child is going to run in here at any moment and interrupt. So if we can minimize those, that'd be great. And the last housekeeping thing I have is just to please be mindful of time, because we want to hear from as many people as possible, and we want to make sure that we get in some questions from the audience. Please be mindful of time. We're going to move pretty quickly. And so we are going to have Regan keeping time. We're going to have Megan taking questions. And so when the time comes up and I ask you to wrap up, please do wrap up. I want to turn it over to Megan now to just say a few things about the Unsheltered Campaign and the Unsheltered Pledge.
Thank you, Laura. So I'm just going to keep it really quick here, but I just wanted to reference kind of how this town hall came to be, and that is from the Unsheltered Pledge. So the pledge really kind of grows out of our response to the region of Waterloo's current direction in facing the housing crisis in Waterloo Region. And based on the August 18th special council meeting, and I know Regan, maybe if you want to stick, Regan has a great summary of that meeting for anybody who was not able to attend. But at this meeting, we acknowledge that Regional Council definitely took a step in their engagement with this crisis. However, we believe that there are still some issues that need some strong attention. So I'm just going to bring up the pledge. Here we go. Okay, so on this website, which is Regan's website, you can find the pledge as well as all of the candidates who have signed up for the pledge so far. So in the pledge, we invited candidates to commit to 3 additional measures surrounding housing and unhoused residents in Waterloo Region. I pledge to approach housing and homelessness from a human rights-based perspective. So that means housing is a human right. I pledge to fight for the rights of unsheltered residents by urging Waterloo Regional Council to end their lawsuit against residents and others involved in the 100 Victoria Street encampment. And I pledge to urge Waterloo Regional Council to approve the sanctioning of all encampments on regional land as an interim measure to keep unsheltered residents safer while they await permanent housing. So, of course, we do not see encampments as a solution to the housing crisis. However, we do believe that they need to be sanctioned as an interim measure. Thank you so much. And again, the pledge is open.
Okay. Thanks, Megan. And I have to say your tab game it reminds me of mine. That is a lot of tabs. It's a lot of tabs, busy. Something I forgot to acknowledge is that there was a lot of collective work that went into developing the pledge. And so I really want to recognize, I see many folks who are part of the Unsheltered Campaign here, and I want to recognize the work that went into that. In terms of the format for tonight, I'd like to invite each candidate to take 60 seconds, to take 1 minute, and talk about why they're here tonight, you know, with respect to the issue of homelessness and unsheltered homelessness and housing. And then we'll open it up to a Q&A from the audience. And I'd like to take maybe 4 or 5 responses, verbal responses to each question. And I would invite folks I don't get to put their responses in the chat, which, because we're recording, the chat will be saved. And we will post those responses along with the recording of this meeting. So this is our attempt to try and ensure that we cover as many folks as possible in a fair way. And when we do the Q&A, we will prioritize people who haven't had a chance to speak yet. And so I'll ask you, candidates, when you want to respond to a question, just to use the raise your hand button. Or you can, you know, because your video's on, you can just raise your hand and I'll see that as well. The low tech and the high tech way. And so in terms of getting started with sort of that 60 seconds of why are you here, I'm going to ask for folks who are running for regional council or mayor to sort of raise their hands so I can spot you. I'm going to invite you to introduce yourselves one by one. So I see Rob Evans and Michael Parkinson. So Rob Evans, I'm going to invite you to go. And Regan, I'm going to ask you to time keep for me, please. So Rob, feel free to unmute yourself. And
okay, Laura, thank you. So the question was, why am I here? Is that right, Laura? Can I ask?
yeah.
So I'm here because housing, I believe, is a human right and should be treated as such. And as part of this, I recognize with the amount of growth we've seen in Waterloo, should the folks not just be centered in Kitchener, not have Victoria Park, I recognize they would be here in my backyard in Waterloo, or they'd be more centered in Cambridge. So this is, in my opinion, a regional issue. But more than that is a human issue. And as much as I respect the good folks who put their name in, who run on council, I feel that the approach that they've taken is an old-fashioned one, and it's too slow. And again, with respect, because this is not an easy issue to tackle, but I'm here because those folks, there are faster, more innovative ways to help them. There's 1,000 people. This isn't 100 or 150. We need to be expediting the way that we help these people faster and more efficiently, and it also costs less and it's more human.
Thank you.
That's why I'm
Rob.
here. Thank you.
And so you'll notice Regan's putting up a little button. So also if you're speaking and you see it, you can use that too. But thank you very much. So I see Gordon has a hand up. So Gordon, I'll invite you to introduce yourself and take your minute.
Hi, I'm Gord Garrett, running for Regional Council, represent Waterloo, and I'm here to learn this evening, more than anything. I support the four-pronged approach that the city has put forward, or sorry, that the region put forward and approved. And as I said, I will continue to support that approach. I also think that the approach that the city staff took to have the lived experience folks provide the input into that was also very positive. So that's basically why I'm here this evening, is to learn more.
That's great. Thank you. Very concise. Michael Parkinson, I saw that you're also a regional candidate, I think. So I will ask you to take your, why are you here?
Well, I had nothing better to do. No, I'm kidding. Good evening, everyone, and thanks to the organizers for organizing and people who took the time to show up. That's important. It's no small thing. Why am I here? I have about 25 years intersecting and walking alongside people who are homeless. I started at a women's shelter, worked at a men's shelter, and then pretty much every year ever since. So that's one reason. So it's an issue close to my heart. Number two, it's the number one issue when I knock on doors around Kitchener. And number three, it's a humanitarian issue for people who are living unsheltered, but it's also an issue for residents and area businesses. And it pains me to watch governments in the main stumble over really good solutions that exist, and we're not taking them up. So that's what I think I have to offer. And in fairness to the folks at Regional Council, really need the province and the feds to step up here. I mean, it's so critical. So
thank you, Michael. Thanks. I see Carrie Williams is also a regional candidate. So I'll ask you, Carrie, to take your minute to tell us why you're here.
Thanks. So I actually met Regan when we ran in the last election together, and I know we were both really kind of passionate about the issues, and the ION kind of overshadowed the encampments and the homeless issue that we saw happening, for the last 10 years. So I thought, I'd just come clarify my position, let everyone know, I've seen a demonstrated need. I run a food program. Our numbers just continually rise. And I think it is a really important thing to focus on, especially because if I'm running for regional council, then I would be the one hopefully helping with that issue. And I think we need definitely a dignified response, so we're not causing more trauma and harm, because we're talking about actual people. So we need to be really delicate in our response, but also find something that's very effective. So thank you.
Thanks, Carrie. I see oh boy, this is where I start to lose track. So I think Rob Duchman, I'm sorry, Rob, I'm probably mispronouncing your name, is here, and I see Jim Erb is here. So Rob, I'll ask you to take your minute and then I'll go to Jim.
Yeah, sure. It's Rob Deutschman. Don't worry about mispronouncing. I've lived for years with that that crutch, so not a problem at all. Homelessness was probably the most significant issue that got me involved in this campaign. I wasn't happy with and I'm not here to be, I'm not critical of the region. They're doing a lot of good things, certainly on the affordable housing piece. They're taking some steps in that direction, but they can do more. But homelessness and the approach to the homelessness and the encampments, one of the main reasons why I got involved in this campaign. I wasn't happy about what happened at Sterling, and I wasn't happy about the approach they've taken with respect to Victoria and Weber, especially when they posted the board that one had to leave by June 30th. And I couldn't understand why they were doing that. And so that's what drove me to get involved. In fact, I've even had my law student that I hired work with Waterloo Region Community Legal Services during the month of August to assist in the action that the region has brought against those people. And my position on that is no eviction solutions, and I want to see more done. I'm glad with the approach that they've started, but what does hybrid encampments mean and all those sorts of things? And I want to work to make sure that we're putting dates to these things and we're putting more meat to the definitions of what sort of steps are going to be taken.
Thank you, Rob. Thanks. So Jim, I'll go to you. So it's just 60 seconds to tell us why you're here.
Thanks, Laura. When I ran for regional council in 2018, my main goal was affordable housing. It continues to be that for this campaign. Anyone that's involved in this campaign knows, talking to people, that it's the primary goal. I have it's a very, very complex issue. I've been chair of the region's homelessness and affordable housing committee, and I understand the complexities of it. I think if we had $1 for every letter and that we've written to the province asking for more additional funding, we might be able to solve the problem with the money that we would have got in writing all those letters. So we're continuing to advocate. I think we're dealing with a humanitarian crisis in terms of housing, particularly those that are unsheltered. And I'm committed to working at that to try and solve the problem.
Okay, thank you. Are there any candidates for regional council or candidates for mayor that I've missed? And you can just wave at me or use the raise hand. Oh, thank you, Matt. Thanks. So I'll invite Matt Rodriguez to please take his 60 seconds.
Yeah, thanks so much, Laura. And good evening, everyone. Glad to be here. You know, I'd echo pretty much everything that everyone has said around the severity of this crisis. And as someone who lives in the downtown area and you know, sees this every day, understanding the urgency to tackle these issues. And so I look forward to bringing my experience as an urban planner to understand how we can better utilize our land, better utilize lands that the region owns, vacant lands and underutilized lots to help tackle this crisis and really bring you know, that resource to the table. You know, to Councillor Erb's piece around funding, that's the big question, and certainly something that you know, we need to continue to work on and advocate for. But land is one piece of that equation, and how we can better utilize our land and really tackle this solution with that resource. And looking forward to working collaboratively with everyone at the regional council table to tackle this this really pressing issue. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Matt. Any other candidates for regional council or mayor that I've missed?
There's Subak Lee is a regional candidate. If you see her.
I do. Subak Lee, can you take your 60 seconds to tell us why you're here? Oh, and you're muted. I'm not sure if you know that you're muted. Maybe I can unmute you. No, I can't. Subak Lee, are you able to unmute?
Subak, if you make your window as big as possible, and then in the bottom left, you might see that mute, unmute button.
Thanks for that, Rob. I think I was trying to unmute and I accidentally turned off or asked to turn off camera. Subak, what I'm going to suggest is I'm going to come back to you, if that's okay. So just turn on your camera or pop your hand up when you're ready for me to come back. Are there any other candidates for regional council or mayor that I've missed? I'm going to then move to Cambridge. Are there any candidates for Cambridge council here? A few. Oh, that's great. So Michelle, I'm going to go to you, and then Ian, I'm going to go to you. So Michelle Braniff, please take your 60 seconds.
So I'm happy to hear some great ideas and consensus and maximizing my use. I'll add a couple of new things. Cambridge has the bridges for emergency. We don't have anything in Cambridge for youth, which is a problem in terms of emergency shelter and women. The Trillium report came out within the last 10 days. Women really are being underserviced and almost invisible. So we need to make sure that women and people who identify as women have safe shelter in the interim. Long-term solution is affordable housing. I liked hearing about looking at land use. What I would like to see is land trusts, both for affordable housing and also for social services. Once we have people housed, we need to make sure that we're providing them with services, social services. Often there are mental health, maybe addiction problems, other issues going on. If we want to keep people housed, we need to make sure that we're looking after them and they have those social services available.
Thank you, Michelle. Ian Campbell, did I say that right?
Yes, you did.
The floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Laura and Megan and the Unsheltered Campaign team for setting this up tonight. I'm a candidate in Ward 6 in Cambridge, and I've knocked on over 6,200 homes, and this is the common #1 theme in Cambridge. There is encampments in Ward 6, whether that's on the Cambridge to Paris Rail Trail, or in the woodlot on Water Street South, or in Franklin and Main woodlot. And when I've been knocking on doors, I've met some of the homeless, and what they are asking for is not a handout, but a hand up. And the common theme of all of the citizens in Ward 6 was not that we need to do better, that we must do better. And that is why I'm running. It's one of the #1 things. I'm 58 years living in the ward here in Cambridge. It's a great city, it's a great region, and we need to address this #1 issue. They want to be part of society and contribute, and that's why I'm running. Thank you.
Thank you, Ian. Let nobody say that campaigning is easy. 6,200 door knocks. It's a lot of door knocks. Matt, the floor is yours. Matt Rogers.
Perfect. Yeah. Hi, guys. I'm Matt Rogers. I'm a candidate in Ward 2 up in the north end of Cambridge here in Hespeler. Similar to what Rob Evans had said, it's not a huge issue in Ward 2 in comparison to, down in Ian's area, down in Ward 6, or down in Ward 4. I know it's big there. I've been talking to candidates there about it, and it is a big deal down there, but it just doesn't seem to be a huge issue for people up in Ward 2, which I guess is nice to have, but ultimately, there is still a concern. And much like the other Matt here, also an urban planner. So I'd like to use the tools I've collected to address the issue, echoing his comments with land use and all that. So that's why I'm here.
Oh, great. Thank you, Matt. I want to go back to Subak Lee and ask, are you able to unmute now? Okay, Subak, make sure you just jump right in when you are, because I want to make sure that you get the floor for your minute. So when you are able to unmute, please do let us know. Anyone else from Cambridge City Council who's running in Cambridge? Then I'd like to move on to Kitchener. So any Kitchener Council candidates here? You can raise your hand or use the raise hand button, or literally raise your hand. I see, is it Aslan? Aslan Clancy? I'm sorry. Ashlyn Clancy, the floor is yours.
So I'm a volunteer with a Better Tent City and a social worker. So, you know, I see a lot about how people end up unsheltered and that model as a solution. And even as they've been working to transition people into affordable housing, that's been a struggle just because of a lot of the different rules, you know, and the longer, what I'm learning is eviction prevention is addiction prevention. So I think we can do a lot to prevent people from being unhoused. There's a lot of the Social Development Center did a report recently on poor maintenance of buildings and an increase. As a social worker, I've noticed an increase in people getting rent evicted and evicted. And so we need to do better to make sure there's a balance of power between real estate trusts and big landlords and the needs of tenants. So I do feel like there's a big imbalance between that needs to be effective there.
Thanks,
and
sorry, your time.
Yeah. Okay.
Stephanie Stretch, I see your hand. Please introduce yourself and the floor is yours for 60 seconds.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Stretch. I'm running in Ward 10 Kitchener. Ward 10 hosts, you know, even sitting here now, I'm just a block or two away from the encampment at Victoria and Weber. Many of our Ward 10 residents, their everyday lives are affected by this issue. So I'm really looking to apply my experience. This has been a huge motivating factor for me in running. I have lots of experience working in the downtown core with precariously housed people and vulnerable people. I'm really tired of solving the same issue over and over again. And I would really love some new solutions. Sort of like what Michael Parkinson has been saying, I'm willing to use my experience here. We've really seen this problem balloon. I ran in 2018 and the numbers have almost doubled since then. And I've been so encouraged knocking on doors, hearing from Ward 10 residents that they want a solution. And I'm excited to find one.
Thank you, Stephanie. Kitchener Council, other candidates. Use the raise hand or literally raise your hand. Debbie Chapman, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for organizing this event. I'm a Ward 9 city councillor, candidate, sorry, in downtown Kitchener. And I think, I'm here because I think we have a housing crisis, an affordable housing crisis, and I don't think we're getting it right. The cities, municipalities only have so many tools that we actually can draw on. As I'm sure everybody here knows, the biggest responsibility falls on the region, but I think we have to work collaboratively to solve this problem. And I don't think it's going to be solved overnight. I think there are, I'm not going to go into all the tools, but it's important to read up on our responsibility, right, as city councillors or as regional councillors or mayors, etc. I take a lot of my own knowledge from Leilani Farhar from the Shift. She's also a former UN rapporteur on housing and affordability. And I think it's we can learn a lot from people that are looking at these things in a much more global perspective.
Thank you, Debbie. Any other Kitchener Council candidates? Okay, thank you. I'm going to move on to Waterloo. Any Waterloo Council candidates here? Oh, wait, I'm sorry, I've missed someone. Have I missed Brooklyn Wallace? Sorry, Brooklyn. The floor is yours if you are able to unmute and speak. It's a large meeting, so I don't see your box. There we go.
She typed in there, she just needs 1 minute.
Oh, no problem, no problem. So why don't we, in the interest of using all of our minutes, why don't we jump over to Waterloo Council, Jen Bassick, who I think I saw the hand, and then we'll jump back to you, Brooklyn.
You say me, my internet spotted out there.
I did say you, if that's all right.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you. I'm Jen Bassick. I'm a candidate in Ward 5. And I mean, this could be any of us. who end up.
Testing?
Oh, sorry. It worked. Should I keep going? Yeah, so it could be any of us, right? And I think that more and more people are realizing that, and people have said that to me as well. People are seeing that any one of us can be injured on the job and lose everything very quickly, because there was that great video that was done as well. And so there's more compassion towards it now, maybe than there has been previously. Not that there's not big pushback, I know there is too. And the other thing in Ward 5, House of Friendship is doing the shelter care model. And I've been really heartened by neighbors who have some concerns about when it's going to come in. But for the most part, I've been hearing people say things like, well, they need somewhere to be. And this is a pretty good spot because there's a park and it's by a trail. And so those are really good things. So I'm heartened and I'm enthusiastic to be here to learn more. Specifically, I have questions about how a lower tier municipality can enable, and what does a safe encampment site look like?
Thank you so much, Jen. Brooklyn, if you're able to unmute and we can hear, perfect. Thank you. Thank you for
Hello. Yeah, sorry, I just was moving from my phone to my computer right as it got to my time. I'm here because I see that the city is ignoring its responsibility when it comes to housing and the unhoused. I think it's much easier to say that it's a regional issue, but we are a part of the region and we can work with the region, and there's lots of things that I know that we can do. And it's extremely, just endlessly frustrating seeing how people are being treated and people are being ignored. And I can't just sit back. That's why I'm running in the first place. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Brooklyn Wallace. Now I see Karen Fisher's hand, and so we're moving back to the Waterloo candidate. So Karen Fisher, the floor is yours for 60 seconds.
Hi, thanks so much. So I'm in Ward 6 in Waterloo, and it was a housing issue that prompted me to run. What I'm concerned with is people sort of falling down the housing ladder, if you will. And so I feel like I'm a little, in my ward, maybe a wee bit further up, but not that far up from the encampment. So I want to be part of the solution. I'm not sure what that is, so I'm here to learn. So thank you.
Okay, thanks, Karen. Any other candidates for Waterloo Council? I see Robert Parent there. So Robert, the floor is yours for 1 minute.
Yeah, how's my sound? Is that good?
Yeah.
Can I be heard? Okay, thank you. Okay, so we have 1 minute. So I would just encapsulate about 3 areas that why I'm here this evening. Is one, of course, to hear, listen. Oh, by the way, thank you everybody for running for council and for all positions. Anyway, so I'm just here to listen to other people with a little more experience, a little more expertise of the issue. I will break it down to 3 areas. As a student, I shared rooming houses, basement apartments with people who were considered unsheltered or mentally emotional issues. I've been to Moss Park in Toronto. I've been to East Vancouver, and the growth really has exploded. Third, I want to talk about, I think Michelle Brandon referred to short-term, long-term. I think when we have a goal in mind, it makes it easier to find solutions. And lastly, before my minute runs out, I've taught in the high schools for 26, 27 years, and I think we need to remember, by extension, some of the kids at school that you see who may be having unsheltered or homeless or unsettled home beginning at home that affects their achievement at school. So I see some of that, and I want to make sure that doesn't get overlooked as well.
Thank you, Robert. Any other candidates for Waterloo Council? I'm going to move on to ask if there are candidates here from any of the townships that would like to speak. See, I was nervous about putting the townships last. I thought they probably always get stuck last. Oh, and we do have one. Stephen Martin, the floor is yours for 60 seconds.
Hi there, thank you. I'm running in Ward 4 as councillor, ward in Wilmot Township. And that Ward 4 is the New Hamburg area. In the townships, homelessness may not be seen as much of an issue, but I know in the past year in the New Hamburg area, we did have a number of people that were living homeless around the edges of town. And so I think that cooperating, whatever we can do to cooperate with the cities and the region is important. And so that would be my intent if I get elected, is to cooperate with the Waterloo Region in work that we can do to contribute to this issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. I also see a hand from Cheryl. Cheryl, the floor is yours for 60 seconds if you're able to unmute. And again, I'll echo the call. Any candidates from any of the townships or anyone who may be popped in late and is a candidate in a different race who hasn't had a chance. Okay. Okay, I don't see any other candidates. So thank you very much. Thanks everyone for being respectful of the 60 seconds. I was kind of nervous about that. Cutting people off is not my strong suit and I didn't really have to do it. So I very much appreciate that. I want to move to the Q&A portion of the night. So I'm going to ask people in the audience who are attending, if you've got questions, to please use the raise hand button or to pop them in the chat. Or you can turn on your camera and wave at me if you want, but to use one of those 3 options. And maybe indicate if your question is pitched at everyone or a particular jurisdiction, like regional candidates or candidates at the City of Waterloo and so on. Aaron Day, I'm stepping all over Megan actually, because it's Megan's job to invite people to ask questions, and I just invited. So Megan, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Well, you're welcome to invite them as well. Erin Day, go ahead, please.
Thank you so much. And I want to thank the Unsheltered Campaign for organizing this. This is so wonderful and so important. My question is for all the candidates. I'm wondering, you've said such heartening things about solutions you see, and it's really great to hear. When you get into the position of being an elected official, I imagine you're going to face incredible pushback to some of these progressive and ideas that you have that treat housing as a human right. So I wanted to get your take on how you address that when people are going to, in your wards, are going to say all sorts of things to try to stop these kinds of responses, these kinds of compassionate and rights-based responses to homelessness.
Okay. Thank you for that question. So candidates, if you'd like to reply to that, I'll invite you to raise your hand, use the raise hand or wave at me. And I will go through a few. I see Michelle. So Michelle, I'll invite you to take 60 seconds to reply. And Reagan, I'll invite you to time keep once again.
So great insight, because council has to work on consensus. There's 8 councillors in Cambridge and a mayor, and I've got an extensive background, social policy, social justice. I teach courses in that. I've been mental health manager. I've also got more than a decade experience as a mediator, conflict resolution, building consensus, and it's all about relationships. So in the very beginning at council, I would be developing relationships respectfully, getting the different points of view. The reality is that it's important to be open for a variety of concerns. And what are people's hesitations? What are they worried about? I've got a graduate diploma in social innovation. I've done a lot of work in that way. And we have what we call a wicked question, which means you don't choose this or that. It's, whatever the concern is, maybe it's about efficiency with money, maybe something else. How can we be compassionate, provide homes, and also be wise with money? And of course, on the money thing, there's always
Thanks, Michelle. Thanks, Michelle. Sorry, you're out of time. Thanks. Ashlyn, I see Ashlyn, I see Ian, and I see Jen. So I'm going to take those and I see Stephanie, and then I'm going to sort of cut the speakers list there on this question and move to the next. Ashlyn, the floor is yours.
I feel like residents want to feel heard, and like Michelle was saying, regulation is a big part of it. So, I think in order for people to feel heard and understood, we have to work to regulate people, and then we can have a meeting of minds. Sometimes there's a lot of misconceptions, misunderstandings, and fears that come along with interactions related to people who are living rough. And so I think we can do a lot to dispel myths, to kind of work with concrete examples of people's fear, kind of make sure people feel heard, and do some good assessment about the situation, making sure we're making informed choices about how we move forward.
Okay, thank you. Ian, the floor is yours.
So similar to what Michelle was talking about, obviously you do have to work with your fellow councillors, but what I've heard loud and clear from the residents in Ward 6 is open and honesty and transparency on the city council. And the way I would approach that is at least twice a year, have open town halls like we're having now at a hall like the Legion or at the Kinbridge Center, where the residents can come and share their concerns and have an open dialogue. So when I'm representing them at city council, it's just not my views, it's the views of all the citizens on how we're going to deal with this topic and other topics in the city. So that's how I would deal with it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Ian. Jen, I don't see your hand anymore. Are you still wanting to speak?
I was, but I don't want to take up time, but I just think we've had some success in Ward 5 with the shelter care model. So I wanted to share a little bit about that, because House of Friendship has been working with city staff, and they have, an email list with people from the neighborhood who are interested in the progress of the project. So we've had one community meeting already facilitated by the city and House of Friendship, and there will be another one when the facility opens. And then so there's that open communication where people can express their concerns. And then I think the other thing is, as a counselor, it's not to shy away from it, so to go door knocking nearby and hear what people have to say. And I think mostly you'll be surprised when you do that. But so just really stepping out and making sure that you're having those, like everyone's saying, open and honest conversations, but to let the people who know how to do the work do the work. So House of Friendship or Unsheltered or other outreach workers. There was one other thing I wanted to say, and I totally forgot. And I think, being on Facebook as the counselor as well. Oh, and you just have
I know, I'm sorry, Jen, you're out of time. Thanks.
Fine.
I'm going to take Stephanie on this question, and then I'm going to request, I know there's other hands, but I'm going to request they have sort of first dibs on the next question, if that's okay. So Stephanie, go for it.
Yes, I think in Ward 10, we have some real gems of social agencies really doing amazing work. We have the Working Center, YWCA, and sort of like what Jen was saying, we really need to learn into their expertise. They are doing a lot of this work, and we have a lot to learn. So communicating and working alongside, partnering is absolutely important. And I'd love to see the city, not excuse itself from the responsibilities of this, but really be able to equip these agencies to keep them nimble and to keep them responsive to these issues, and keep communicating and working collaboratively, because we really do host in Ward 10 our local experts in caring and wraparound services. So we need to really listen.
Okay. Thanks for that, Stephanie. I'm going to turn to Megan to ask the next question. And like I said, I know folks had their hands up and I wasn't able to get to them, so I will get to you first for the next one.
Okay, and Leslie in the chat asks a question for regional council candidates. How will you validate information provided by regional staff or direct staff on the homelessness?
So question from Leslie. I see Jim Erb's hand up. So Jim, the floor is yours for 60 seconds.
Thanks. Just so I'm clear, you're asking how we will validate the information received from regional staff?
That's what the question says. I don't know if
Yes.
Leslie's here and Leslie
Yep.
to elaborate.
Yeah, so in the past 2 years, we have seen a number of reports go to regional council that have not represented what more experts in the community and individuals that are impacted by homelessness have really asked for or been asking for over these 2 years. In some ways, they've been completely opposite. And so there is a concern, there's been a gap between what the staff is providing and what, regional council is looking at to make decisions. And is it really reflective of those in the community?
Okay.
Okay, thanks for the clarification. My response would be, I think we have staff that are second to none that are looking after the housing files in the region of Waterloo. And I fully trust the information that we are receiving from them. I know more recently we've been starting to engage with people who have lived experiences, which I think is a bonus and is helped to develop some of the decisions that we've made more recently. But by and large, I have complete confidence in the information that council is receiving from our staff and have confidence to make decisions going forward based on that information.
Okay, thank you, Jim. I see Rob Deutschman has his hand raised as well.
Yeah, thanks for that question. The politician-staff relationship is always an interesting one because as elected officials, you show up, you're not experts in these fields, and you want to count and rely on staff for the information they provide you because they are presumably the experts in this area. And certainly the region does have exceptional people from my previous experience. However, when we engage, Jim mentioned speaking to people with lived experiences, the more we engage personally with the community, listen to their stories, then we are able to, through that filter, appreciate the information we're receiving. And if we do have some doubts, then we ask questions and push back. And we have to be comfortable to do that, not afraid to ask questions and not be afraid to maybe sometimes look silly. But that's the best we can do is push back, but get immersed in the issue so that we understand and have that lens to better understand the information we're receiving and not be just spoon-fed one way.
Okay, thank you, Rob. I'll turn it back, seeing no other hands from candidates, I'll turn it back over to Megan to ask the next question or invite the next person.
Laura, I did see Rob Evans popped up his hand.
I'm so sorry, Rob. Thank you. Thanks, Megan.
Thank you. To what the earlier question was about the data and the staff, there's no lack of caring. This Zoom meeting is a great example of that. The staff know what they're doing, but when we talk to the staff, as a housing and accommodation expert myself in innovation, looking at different ways of approaching the same problem, beds are needed. So when you work backwards from that, what the data shows us, it's about 30%, 30 to 50% of the homeless folks today require supportive housing, and there's more innovative ways of securing that faster and less expensive than what we're currently doing. So with only a few seconds left, I do trust the good data that we have. And when we talk to the staff about the reasons why they're having trouble securing rooms, the answer is right there. So there's innovative ways of doing this. And that's, I think, one of the things that we'll look at. Innovation to secure rooms faster. There is a new way to do it.
Okay. Thank you, Rob. I see Carrie's hand and I see Michael Parkinson. I'm going to close the speakers list on this question after those two. Carrie, the floor is yours. You are muted.
Sorry, my child was in the background. I was like, please go away right now. I think one of the things we need to do is to actually show that we're valuing the engagement information that we're collecting, because sometimes people feel like they're giving us this information and we are only listening to staff or experts and we're not listening as much to the public and the lived experience that we could be listening to. So I realize obviously staff reports are amazing. We have all these people that have, great education, they have tons of information and we can use that. So we should also be looking to other things as well, like the community experts, lived experience, and sorry, totally lost my train of thought there. There's one other thing that I was going to say, but I'll just let it go.
Thank you, Carrie Williams. I'm going to turn it over to Michael Parkinson.
Hey, thanks so much. I'm going to try to answer 2 questions in one before the moderator cuts me off. You're doing a great job. So on the first question, honestly, I don't think the concerns of people who live in encampments and shelters and area residents and businesses are mutually exclusive. They are simply not. I think it's more of a manifestation of the way this crisis has been mismanaged. And I'm not going to throw staff at the region under the bus, but there are, having been on the inside, there are a number of political filters it goes through. So the question is correct. There is a disconnect between some of the reports that we see and what happens in community. And part of that is around the siloing of the issues. More than half the people in those in shelters, camps have traumatic brain injuries, right? Lots are struggling with mental health. Most are using drugs. The solutions to that kind of stuff is not squarely housing, and it's certainly not criminalizing them. So a more fulsome approach, I think, would alleviate the concerns of residents, businesses, and the people who live without stable housing. So.
Okay, thank you, Michael. Thanks for that. I saw, I think, another hand pop up. I want to move to the next question from the audience. Like I said, I will prioritize first-time speakers and responding. So I'll turn it over to Megan to invite a question.
Okay, I know David has had their hand up for quite a while, and the next question after David will be Marjorie. So David, please go ahead.
Yeah, hello folks. It's a pleasure to connect with you all. I'm sure some of you have heard of the Lived Expertise Working Group that is operating out of the Social Development Center in the city of Kitchener. And over the past 2 months, they have been advocating to the region of Waterloo on the interim housing strategies. And their 2 main calls to action have been on decriminalizing homelessness and funding lived expertise throughout the process. And so I was just wondering if folks have already started doing some brainstorming of some tools that you have in your toolkit as councillors on how you can implement these calls to action from the Lived Expertise Working Group.
Okay. Thank you, David. I see a few hands. I'm going to invite Rob Evans to get in here, and then I see Carrie Williams's hand, and I see Michael Parkinson, and then I will invite any candidates who haven't had a chance to weigh in on a question to please let me know if you'd like to speak on this.
Thank you. That's a good question. So the lived experience examples that I know of, and speaking to the folks downtown Kitchener specifically, as well as there's about 3 to 5 organizations throughout Waterloo Region who have staff whose job it is to assist folks finding rooms. The lived experience part that is very interesting is the amount of discrimination that both they and the staff face when working to secure safe, trusted places to sleep that are within the affordability range for a lot of these folks. And so part of that, when we can remove the discrimination that's unfair from the process, it helps everybody. And there's a trickle-down effect in that that removes that systemic element of when everybody making calls to the same landlords or the same facilities or the same partners and developers to try to build a new facility that's a little bit different with folks that have higher needs than other folks. That discrimination is a problem, but it can be removed, and there's ways of doing that. So with just a few seconds left,
I think you're actually out of time, Rob.
Okay.
I see the red circle with the X, so thank you for that. I see that Carrie's hand was still up from before, so I'm going to go to Michael Parkinson, and then I'm going to invite any candidates who haven't had a chance to weigh in if they're interested in answering this to please let me know.
Thanks. It's a great question, right? Like your health there is zero evidence that your health gets better, that your conditions improve by criminalizing your circumstance, right? So think, 8 or 9 out of every 10 people in the shelter system are using illegal drugs. It's absolutely criminalized. And so, in work that I've done, 42 participants, average number of times in and out of jail, 12, average amount of money spent incarcerating those people, more than $1 million. So that's the legal system. And then at the shelter kind of system, Governments have ignored opportunities to decriminalize their lives. I'm thinking substance use in particular. And then of course, spending $1,600 or whatever it is per person to hire security guards for Vic and Weber. I mean, that's housing. So yeah, criminalization is a root cause issue for people in those circumstances. Serious.
Okay, thank you, Michael. I see Stephanie and Rob, so I'm going to go to Stephanie and Rob, and then I'm going to close the speakers list on this question. Stephanie, the floor is yours for 60 seconds.
Yeah, I'm right on board with what Michael said. I think the answer is in the question with this one. I think it's not a crime to be homeless, and we should stop responding with police for a non-criminal act. And I think, yes, we should value lived experience, absolutely, and we should value that with funds, just like we would with anyone else.
Thank you, Stephanie. I'm going to invite Rob to take the floor. I also want to draw folks' attention to the chat, as there's been some responses from candidates to this question and other information in the chat. Rob, the floor is yours for 60 seconds.
Yeah, first, I just want to say it's great to see David Alton. I always enjoy watching him and his group participate in this. I'm glad that the region and the city are using them as a resource. Hopefully they're feeling like it's effective as well, because sometimes people don't feel like they're being properly heard. On this issue, just quickly on the court action that the region has started, I posted earlier today that if elected, I will be bringing a motion forward at Regional Council immediately to ask that the region will not pursue any eviction if the court awards that eviction. It's up to the region to decide if they want to utilize it or not. I do not understand why the region, with everything that they're doing of recent, why they are insisting on pushing ahead with this court case. They should stop the case, drop it now, save the legal costs, and focus on solutions, not evictions.
Thank you, Rob. I'll turn it back over to Megan now to ask for the next question.
Okay, we are going to have Marjorie and then on deck, Heather in the chat.
Greetings, everyone. This is a fabulous opportunity, and I'm glad to see so many familiar faces. I work in family outreach, as most of you know, and we are talking about unhoused and homelessness, and it's not just in the encampments. Every day I have families who are going homeless. They are going homeless because they can't afford rent. They're going homeless because they have been rent evicted. They're going homeless sometimes because of some arbitrary, ridiculous rules that appear, some of them in our social housing. But the bottom line is that there are a lot of unseen people going homeless. There are a lot of people who are living in their cars. A lot of people who literally are bouncing couch to couch every day. And the bottom line of that is that they can't afford housing. Cambridge is booming. There is so much building going on. And you have things like a 900 unit build. And they have offered 4, as in 1, 2, 3, 4 units for, affordable housing. What are you going to do about that? It's not just about building, but it's about, these luxury condos and beautiful buildings that are being built that we can't afford. And so we are getting pushed out of our own homes. Where do we go? How are you going to deal with that? I open this to everyone, especially the Cambridge candidates.
Okay. Thank you, Marjorie. So we've got this open to everyone, especially the Cambridge candidates. I'm going to go, I see this question has sparked some response. I'm going to go to Matt Rogers first, as a first-time speaker and also Cambridge candidate. Matt, the floor is yours for 60 seconds.
Awesome. Marjorie, I think I know we've emailed a little bit, but I can't remember if this was something we discussed, but going on the whole Cambridge is booming thing, let's take advantage of this. In my platform, I've laid out that we should be introducing requirements for developers that are building these luxury condos to include affordable housing units, whether it's within that development itself or on another site in a different part of the city, or if they'd like to basically pay for the region to build affordable housing on their behalf. Of course, all these varying different levels would come with different percentages. So if you want to do it on site, you do 10%. If you want to do it off site, you do 15%. If you want to pay the region to build it, you pay the equivalent of what it would cost to build 20% of the units affordable. So I think that's definitely something we should do. And going back to the whole, the little rules and stuff that really shouldn't force people to be homeless. Let's work those out and try and get rid of as many of those as possible.
Thank you, Matt. Thanks. Sorry, I always feel badly when I'm cutting people off. So I appreciated your comment and thank you. And we will move on. I'm going to go to Karen Fisher next as a first-time speaker. And then I see Matt Rodriguez. And then Michelle Braniff, I see your hand or your applause hand, which I think is a hand. So I see you. But Karen, the floor is yours.
Thanks so much. One of the things that I wanted to do, if elected, is open the conversation of how the city contributes to unaffordable housing. And so one of the ways could be that we're not asking for what we need from developers, and we're not maybe holding them to, okay, you can produce these units, but they need to be able to rent for this amount or be sold for this amount. As opposed to just, you meet the land requirements and, finish it however you want, charge whatever you want. So I think we could do more in terms of accountability. Thank you.
Thanks, Karen. I'm going to go to Matt Rodriguez. The floor is yours for 60 seconds.
Yeah, thanks so much. I think it's important to acknowledge that our hands are a bit tied by the province in terms of what we can impose on developers through the planning application process. And so what I'm a big proponent of is that we receive cash from developers. To Marjorie's point, having 4 units in a building, without any services, just sort of floating there, who's operating them, who's maintaining them, and what are the standards? And so how can we take those dollars and how can we get the region to continue to actually build those units, to operate those units, and to build, actually build more housing? I think we're getting hung up on every development. If they don't have affordable housing, we're getting hung up on not approving it, and there is this tension there. And so I would like to see that cash come to the region for us to be able to build housing. I'll also add that I think the region can do a lot to support the co-op housing sector through property tax deferrals and others to help keep existing rental units out of the hands of REITs, to make these co-op models more competitive and make the dollars make sense. And it's sort of a low cost thing that the region can do. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. I'm going to go to Michelle next, and then I see Debbie Chapman, and I'm going to go to Debbie next, and then I see Ashlyn and Ian, and then I'm going to close the list on this question. So Michelle, the floor is yours for 60 seconds.
Thanks. I agree that there are issues that are best dealt with by province, by the region, by federal in terms of funding, but there is that relationship between the city and developers. And there are some things that the city can demand, and there are other ways to push in terms of the relationship. Right now, developers are making donations. And so there's the voluntary aspect to kind of up the ante. And I also think it's important to look at decommodify, like housing should not be a commodity that people are playing with that market. We need to look at some of the cities where it's worked and where it hasn't worked, and find ways that we can, maintain housing prices before everyone's, priced out of the market. And I made a pitch before about land trusts, but this is kind of like rare in Cambridge, only it would be for social services and affordable housing. And that's something else we want to explore. So lots of social innovation, really push the relationships. It's a complex problem. It takes a whole village to raise a child. It takes a whole village to house a village.
Okay, thank you, Michelle. And I saw Debbie Chapman's hand. Debbie, are you still wanting to speak on this? We'll maybe come back to Debbie. I see Brooklyn Wallace here. I know Brooklyn hasn't spoken on a question yet. So Brooklyn, I'm going to jump you the queue and the floor is yours.
Thank you so much for letting me jump the queue a little bit.
I sort of missed some of this question, but from the other responses, I think I sort of pieced it together. The affordability issue obviously is a major one. The way that I see other cities handling affordability, the ones that are handling it well, at least, is by having lots of options for everyone. If we only build 2 types of housing in single detached homes and condo buildings, we only bring in 2 types of incomes, and that by itself is not enough to stabilize or enough to do anything really. In areas that have lots of different types of housing, they've allowed the missing middle to thrive. There's so much more income diversity, which stabilizes prices and keeps everything much neater.
Thank you, Brooklyn. Thank you. Debbie, I see you back with the hand.
Yeah, sorry about that.
No, that's okay. Glad to have you.
Away. Yeah, you know, the city has 3, you know, that again, as a city councillor, I can tell you that the city, at the city level, there are some of the tools that we have are donating land for to not-for-profits to build more affordable, deeply affordable housing. We can also waive development charges. But one tool we've never adopted, certainly in the city of Kitchener, and I think maybe Toronto is the only place, is called inclusionary zoning. And none of these on their own are going to solve the problem. But what inclusionary zoning would allow us to do is to require in every new residential building above 6 stories within certain areas, the MTSAs and the urban centers, require developers to include a certain percentage of affordable housing units. So what would need to be defined in that context is what we mean by affordable. And I think Marjorie made a very good point, because $1,200 is not affordable. But the city would have the ability to define what we mean by affordable, but it would also have the ability to determine what percentage of those units. And I would say it should be at least 20%, and let's go for 40, right?
Thank you, Debbie. I'm sorry, you're out of time.
Okay, thank you.
I'm liking everything you're saying, but you're out of time. I'm probably not supposed to say that as moderator. I mean, I'm very neutral. I'm very neutral about everything. Ashley, oh my goodness, Ashlyn, and then Ian, and then I'm going to move back to Megan for the next question.
I'm troubled by the behavior of big property owners. I've heard a lot of people being run evicted. A lot of folks don't know their rights. So I think, and a lot of the eviction prevention services are grossly underfunded. So I think there has to be a shift in accountability, and we're empowering big business to evict people and break the rules and harass people. So we're putting a lot of vulnerable folks in a lot of stress. I know in the Social Development Center report, they said there was a city in BC where there were steep fines for rent evictions. And so I'd like to see some of those measures put in place to prevent people from being unsheltered in the first place.
Thank you, Ashlyn. And Ian, thank you for your patience. The floor is yours for 60 seconds.
No problem. Marjorie, great question. And this is a very polarized hot topic in Ward 6, where that development is going on Water Street. A lot of the neighbors and citizens that I talked to weren't upset that the complex was going, but it was about how high it was and all of the deviations to the proposed building plan and the lack of affordable housing that was in that complex. City Hall has already passed it, and if I get elected, we're going to try to reopen that, because I believe, as the citizens have said, it's too high and it doesn't appear to give housing for all sectors at an affordable rate. And it was a very bad decision, and it needs to be changed. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Ian. I'm going to turn it over to Megan to ask the next question.
Okay, the next question is from Heather, one of the founding members of Unsheltered Campaign. When you are on council, will you advocate for the expropriation of derelict or neglected properties to provide services to buildings and lands to ensure housing is a human right as soon as possible?
Thanks, Heather, for that question. And I'll invite candidates to raise their hand or wave at me. Again, you know, candidates who haven't had us, I think most folks have gotten to answer one question at least, but folks who haven't spoken recently, I will give priority to. I see Brooklyn and I see Rob. Brooklyn, the floor is yours for 60 seconds.
Rob can go ahead on this one.
Yes.
I'm just reconfiguring my setup.
Of course. I'm going to go to Rob. I'm going to go to, there's lots of hands. Okay, no more hands now. We're done with hands for this one. I'm going to go Rob, back to Brooklyn, over to Simon, down to Jim, and then back to Stephanie. Okay. Rob, the floor is yours for 60 seconds.
Yeah, thank you. Interesting question. You know, expropriation is a pretty heavy-handed tool that municipalities have, and one that they don't often like to use because there's a lot of implications with respect to taking property and what are the costs that are going to be incurred. I think before we get to that step, we have to take a look at an inventory, what land we currently have as a region and the cities. The two have to work together because the cities have a lot of land as well. And we have to see what we already have that we can utilize in order to try to look at options like another better tent city or other places that we can use to assist in this homelessness fight before we go the expropriation route. Thank you.
Thanks, Rob. Brooklyn, over to you.
One of the reasons that I started running is because in my neighborhood, there's one very large factory that is mostly unused, and there's a church or a Catholic school that is entirely empty, has been totally empty for 30 years. That's so frustrating. And yeah, I want to take those and use them for something better. I don't see why a church even has just been sitting on a school for 30 years. The only thing I could find anything about it was that they boarded up the windows and people were sad about it 10 years ago. That's crazy considering the crisis that we're in.
Thank you, Brooklyn. Simon, I just want to check in. Are you a candidate?
Yes, I am a candidate.
That's what I thought, but I think we missed you
Yes.
at the beginning. Do you mind introducing yourself and where you're running?
Absolutely. And I apologize for being late. I was out knocking on doors. It's a week to go until the election, and I felt like I had to do as much of that tonight as I could. So I'm running in Ward 1 in Kitchener. We include Stanley Park, we include Bridgeport, we include a lot of what we would call Kiwanis Park, though on a map, I think it's called Bridgeport North. It's a bit of a vast ward out here in Kitchener. The boundaries are the Grand River, Ottawa Street, the Expressway, and Kiwanis Park, like I said. So yeah, it's been a heck of a campaign so far. I'm happy to join in for here. I happily signed that pledge. It didn't take too much reflection because I've already done the reflection on questions of, is housing a human right? Yes, it is. And do we need to make it, almost a drop everything? Let's try to find some solutions here. But as I, walk around my ward and talk to people, homelessness is the number one concern. Housing affordability for people that you might traditionally think, of course they would own a house. Well, they can't because, prices have gone up so much. Parents are wondering where their children are going to live. Adults are wondering where they're going to live when they can no longer live in their, 4-bedroom house. But yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
That's so thank you. Sorry, we're just at time, but what I might do, if it's okay with you, is I think that was a great introduction. I imagine you might want to get in on the question. So I'm going to go Jim, Stephanie, and I'll let you get back in the question if you'd like. Okay, Jim, the floor is yours for 60 seconds.
Thanks, Laura, and I wish some of us would have been as brave as Simon out knocking on doors on a night like tonight. So kudos to you for doing that. Expropriation, I think, is a pretty expensive, complicated, and not a very friendly tool to use in communities. I think what the region has been trying to do in the last 2 years with our new strategy, and we have identified 3 surplus properties. 2 of them we have given to not-for-profit groups in the community. There's an RFP out for another 3 groups. We've partnered with the city of Kitchener, where the Y has built a new facility on Block Line Road. We partnered with St. Mark's Lutheran Church, where Inwell is developing some housing. So I think what we need to do is develop strategic partnerships with not-for-profit and community groups that will advance the housing in our community. And I think we've been reasonably successful at it. We've got a long, long way to go. But I think the partnerships in the community are the way to go.
Thank you, Jim. Stephanie, the floor is yours for 60 seconds.
Thank you. Yeah, I was going to speak to the idea of relationship here too, and partnering. I think with a Better Tent City, you know, that came out of a relationship with Ron Doyle and his willingness to work with the region and the city to serve and offer space. I think absolutely we have a lot of land, a lot of resources, and I would love to see creative solutions into accessing that, whether that's the you know, private owners selling it back to the city, or, you know, there's many different ideas on how to access some of this land. And we need to be creative about it, but we also need to lean into our relationships with these owners, with these people, with the region and the city working together to collaborate, and always taking advice from our local experts.
Thank you, Stephanie. I just want to draw your attention to the chat. There's some great information sharing happening in the chat right now. Simon, I'll let you weigh in now on the question, which was around expropriation of vacant property as a tool for addressing homelessness. The floor is yours for another 60 seconds.
Thank you very much. Expropriation is a pretty powerful word, and it gets people's hackles up. So, you know, if that was on your bingo card, hackles, check. It's not the only tool that city councils have. There are property standards questions. There are planning processes. We can work with property owners. If there's a question of a derelict building where, you know, there are safety questions, perhaps an accelerated demolition, like the one that I saw recently up on Columbia in Waterloo, might be appropriate. Working with property owners is always going to be preferable to using a hammer like expropriation. But yes, when it comes to development, I love infill developments. I love replacing old buildings with new buildings. It makes the most sense. It stops the sprawl going outwards, and protecting the countryside, because the countryside is one of the things that I like best about living out here on the east side of Kitchener. The more that Kitchener can build inside of its own borders, the less I see areas like Breslau turning into suburban wastelands.
Okay. Thank you, Simon. I believe we have time for one more question. I'm going to turn it over to Megan for our final question, and then I will sort of close the meeting, close the town hall.
You know what, we actually had just a follow-up to this question from Jen Vasic, who is running for Ward 5 in Waterloo. I have a follow-up question. Are there communities that have a policy for the expropriation of derelict buildings? We have a wealth of knowledge here. So does anybody know the answer to Jen's question?
Okay. Are there communities that have expropriation policies in place? It is a tricky question, I think, because it, you know, there might be, for some circumstances, I can only think of it in terms of major public works, and usually negotiated to some extent with the landowners, so highways and things like that. Jen, do you want to jump in?
Well, I just wanted to clarify, because I'm thinking, like, the reason why I asked that question, because it's a great question, because there are definitely those buildings, like Heather said before, like the White Rose one. So I guess if I'm curious if there's a policy, or if there are policies in other communities, or maybe even if there aren't, but there are places that have explored that, what were the steps they took to get there? So, and like everyone here is saying, first, maybe you would look at a conversation or relationship building, but are there other steps we're maybe missing along the way? So that's why I asked that question, to think about like learnings from other communities, and maybe there is a policy, could we better understand it? And I definitely appreciate the expropriation of Indigenous lands too, Heather, for sure. So, but I'm curious about sort of just specifically around expropriation of derelict buildings. Yeah.
I see some comments in the chat, including some very rapid Googling. So maybe there will be some useful resources there. So I might just invite, if anyone, I see Ashlyn Clancy has her hand up. So Ashlyn, the floor is yours for 60 seconds.
Yeah, so something that I noticed, I know that there was a recent they were looking into putting vacant spaces like fees, so kind of making it more expensive to leave spaces expensive. My concern with that, and the reason why it wasn't adopted by City Council from Kitchener, from my understanding, is that it wasn't deemed viable financially. But I think it wasn't viable financially because the list of exceptions was a mile long. So as long as short-term rentals and things that are proposed for development, et cetera, continue to get aren't penalized for leaving spaces vacant, I think there won't be leverage to make renting out at a lower price viable for businesses. So we have to kind of price things to create a better balance. That's my 2 cents.
Thanks, Ashland. I see Rob. Rob, the floor is yours for 60 seconds.
Yeah, thanks. I just did a quick Google search, and up came this report that was done for the City of Toronto. And one of the points that the report recommended was reclaiming abandoned housing with vacancy fees and an expropriation scheme that would see suitable abandoned buildings converted into affordable housing with nonprofit partners. So, it might be something to be explored.
Okay. Thank you, Rob. We're about at time. I mean, we're not quite, we have a few minutes, but I think no one ever complained about a meeting ending 5 minutes early, right? So I just want to take a moment to say, thank you so very much for being here. I know time is a hot commodity the week before Election Day. And so I really want to extend an enormous thank you to all of the candidates that made time this evening to be here for an hour and a half. We really appreciate it. I think it speaks to the urgency of this issue in our community. I want to thank the members of the Unsheltered Campaign that helped to put this together. I will just remind you that we will be posting this publicly. And the wonderful thing about Eventbrite is we have all your contact information. So we will send that out when it is up to help share some of the conversation from tonight. So thank you so very much. Have a wonderful rest of your evening, and good luck in the election campaign.
Bye. Thanks, Unsheltered Campaign. Well done.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.